So I'm really excited to have a conversation now with a lady called Neethu Stevens, who we know very well. And
Mhm.
Neethu is a CFO to various businesses of all shapes and sizes. And I'll let Neethu introduce herself in a sec. The reason I'm talking to Neethu is that as part of our work, which is, getting people onto HubSpot and helping them optimize, very often we have conversations with our clients and they themselves have to go and talk to a CFO about why they should invest in HubSpot. And so we thought it'd be really useful for those guys that have to do that to talk about business cases, to talk about ROI and all that sort of stuff, to get a bit more insight into who are these CFOs, what do they want, what do they don't want, what do they not want to hear from you. So, Neethu, thank you very much for joining us. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Adam, for having me on. I think it's a different conversation than what we usually have, isn't it? It's very exciting to be here with you, just talking through some of the perspectives we see in the financial world. To introduce myself, I think you actually summed it up really well. So, we provide a financial suite of services to SMEs predominantly who are in the digital space. So, you are either an agency, a SaaS business, even crypto Web3 businesses we actually service nowadays, interestingly. So, that's what we do. And like I said, yeah, really exciting to be here. Happy to, we'll see how this goes. I hope it all goes well.
Brilliant. Yes. So, Neethu, let's start off
Hmm.
by talking about CFOs and what are their priorities. So, could you just briefly outline, like, what does a CFO do day to day?
Yeah, so CFOs are predominantly working with other CCO team members and a greater sort of financial team to fuel the financial strategy of the company forward. So as a company, you'd have your goals, your the priorities that are set for a company, SMEs and large enterprises. And we sort of sit, basically, the role has changed so much from a traditional point of view where you were leading the finance team alone, whereas it sort of has segued into many other sectors within an organization and sort of pulling all of that together and building a financial strategy and a sort of growth path forward for the company. So that's what I think most CFOs do on a day to day. In smaller enterprises, it can be a little bit more hands on than that, which we all know about, isn't it? So, yeah, so that's where we sit predominantly, I think.
That's great. And I want to pick up on a word you used there
Hmm.
called growth,
Yes.
because I think a lot of people perceive CFOs as about cost control
Hmm.
and very
Yes.
much like, well, yeah, you can't have that, you can't spend that, you don't have budget for that.
Yeah.
So, could you talk to us a little bit about, how do CFOs look at growth? Like, what are they looking for? What are the sorts of conversations they like to have about growth?
Yes. So I think for most CFOs, we will have a mandate that we want to work around. And growth in today's world, right? Right when we are in 2024, where we have so many economic challenges around the world, there is a large amount of CFOs and finance people really, really focused on core pillars that they define for themselves, for their organizations. For me, it's something that I usually call PPDC. It's people, process, data, and culture. For me, I mean, this is something that we emphasize a lot on for all of our clients. And key to a lot of these areas is risk in terms of talent, risk in terms of processes, and the things that we desperately want to do, but we do not have either the visibility, the budget, or the path forward to be able to accomplish that. So the perspective that the CFO is sitting there to say no to most things is wrong. But we also have a greater responsibility to the board, to stakeholders, and we are directly sort of, in line with shareholders, especially for. I manage that role quite a lot, where I get a lot of questions from stakeholders, shareholders, the board. As you know, we've been through this multiple times. And we need to have a good narrative to be able to put in front of them when it comes to costs, how we expect to grow in certain areas, keeping in mind all these challenges that we see. So, when we talk about growth, it's important to talk about digital transformation. It's important to talk about risk mitigation, the talent crunch that we have all seen across all sectors and spheres. So yeah, I think marrying up any sort of new implementation or any sort of new pathway you want to create for an organization merits talking about how this marries into the larger goal of the company. I think, yeah.
Okay, so that's really good then, as a segue into imagining the scenario where people like me and our clients, they come to the CFO, they say, right, we've got a digital transformation project. We want to move to, in our case, HubSpot. There's going to be license costs. There's going to be implementation costs for partners like us. I mean, any thoughts really on how that should be positioned, how you should position that, and what should be in that business case? And in fact, should we be just talking about business cases? Should we know how to structure it as a business case?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of emphasis that people will have. So, first of all, I think a lot of us are time strapped, right? You don't have all the time to do all the research and figure out what is the best way to go forward with this. I would actually, if I listen to my own clients, they usually come to me. They do not talk about the cost first. They are usually telling me that, this is a great project. They paint a fantastic narrative around what advantage we're going to have from this. And that's what I think most finance people want to hear. What's the opportunity cost here, right? Like, if we don't do this, what are we going to lose? Like, how are we going to improve our processes? The time of our people, the effort that they put in, the greater, how is this going to sort of communicate into or flow into a greater goals that we have? Like we said, right? For digital transformation is on the forefront of all of this for a lot of CFOs, and we want better workflows, we want better data, and the kind of data that we get sometimes is not always very good, and probably HubSpot can help with that. So when you talk about a business case, you want to talk about the advantages first and center. You want to be realistic about what you can achieve through this. You want to be very, very clear about what you want to do with this, right? So I think when I think about that, in fact, the webinar you had, I think with Countrywide, if I'm not mistaken, she was very articulate about how she approached it. This was a fantastic way to do it. I was thinking, if I was her CFO or the finance controller, I would view this very, very positively because she's very clear about where she wants to go with this, what she hopes to achieve with this. And she was realistic, I believe, about the timelines. I'm sure you have helped her quite a lot in defining that. And partners like Boom can be invaluable in that because you've seen these kind of implementation across industries, across companies of various times and sizes. And you can call out and tell them that, if you go to your CFO and tell them this is going to happen in 1 month, he's going to turn around and say, well, is that realistic? And you can advise them there, right? So that's where I think collaboration with companies like Boom can be invaluable for many, many, many people who are actually thinking about this journey. So yeah, and we want to talk about ROI again, being realistic about the time and the effort and the cost that is involved. I think that's very important, being very, very realistic about how we see this unraveling.
Okay, that's really
Yeah.
good. Then, so to recap, then something I've picked up: there, don't be afraid to tell a story, to do the narrative. Um, don't just give them a spreadsheet because you think that they just look at spreadsheets, probably.
No, no, I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Yeah, have a conversation like how we are doing it now.
Yes.
I think obviously there is a financial piece to it. And I think it's very important to give them a perspective of this is how we think it's going to work. And if all goes well, this is how we're going to do it. If nothing goes well, this is how we're going to do. This is how it will be. And the most likely scenario is somewhere in the middle, where you actually tell them that these are the three ways we would see it happening. The way it absolutely goes well, the way it absolutely doesn't go well at all, and the way and a sort of you know, middle way where we say that this is most likely how it's going to be.
Okay.
And then the CFO can actually think about how my numbers are going to work, or how my, the financial strategy is going to work under each of those scenarios, because we all do scenario planning. And the more information we have to be able to decisively do that, it'll be helpful. It'll be helpful.
That's really good. I'd never thought of giving three scenarios, because
Yeah.
also it goes to your point about talking about risk and
Yes.
reality,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Because if I go in there and say HubSpot's going to transform your business and double your revenue, no one's actually going to believe that. I mean, it's quite possible it might be in certain scenarios, but they're not going to believe that. If I say that's the best case, the
Yes.
middle
Yeah.
case is this, and if we don't get HubSpot off the ground, it's not adopted, and all these other things, which are primarily implementation issues,
Yeah.
it's not going to do very much. It's not going to move us forward. And I guess then the CFO can kind of understand, it looks more realistic. They can understand that if I invest a bit more, maybe we're going to go more likely to hit our target.
Yes.
And you also talked about opportunity cost. I think that's really, really interesting, because all businesses have the option of doing nothing, don't they?
Yes.
So
They do.
if they've got a growth goal and they need to enter a new market or improve the performance of the sales team or market better, and they know that that's something they need to do, they could do nothing, as in move platforms or bring in a partner like us. They could just try and work with what they've got. So I think you
Yes.
need to demonstrate that if you carry on doing that, it's unlikely to move us forward.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's really good. And then could we talk a little bit more about ROI?
Yes.
Because I think probably our customers might struggle with the idea that if I bring in a new automation system or new CRM, how do I demonstrate the ROI of that?
Yes. So I think, again, from a Boom's perspective, this is something you probably can massively help on, because you've seen, implementations gone really well, where you actually have achieved your doubling of sales and your incredible sales data and metrics that you can actually use, because all of us are actually sitting on limitations, isn't it? We have limitation of time, resources, money, and we are all fighting for the same part of a pie that we all want to have a chunk of. So when you go to a finance person, it could be a controller, it could be a CFO. Let's keep it as a CFO. You want to be very clear about, this is how we see the return on this investment working, because at the moment we have really bad sales data. We do not have a structured pipeline plan. We do not have visibility of how we are actually going to achieve that growth. And that data is an incredibly misused word, right, in today's times. But we all struggle with the quality of data we get, whether it's the sales numbers, whether it's the financial data. We all have questions that we ask of it, like, how realistic is this? How good is this? And one of the biggest things that CFOs do, obviously, we have to forward plan, right? The budgeting, the forecasting, that's so important. And we need to be able to plot a return on spending an amount of money within a certain period of time. So when we talk about ROIs, I think it's incredibly important to talk about not just a financial ROI. You have to talk about how this is going to help people get better at their jobs, simplify the operational flow, simplify process, workflows, because all of that sort of flows into your financial mandate. Because if people are working on better projects, if people are working with better data, they are working much more efficiently, which is basically a cost save for us, right? I know it's a very subtle way of putting it. It's not easy to quantify those things, but perhaps Boom, with the kind of experience you've had working with these kind of bigger and smaller teams, can say, yeah, this particular company, which is about the size that you are,
Mm.
achieved better sales results in 6 months' time, 1 year's time.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And actually, I think there's three broad buckets that I use to talk about business case for this. The first of all is generating more revenue,
yes, yeah,
and that can be done in so many ways. So it can be salespeople using the new tools to close more deals. It can
yes,
be the marketing people using new tools in HubSpot to engage with new audiences and do that better than they were before.
yeah,
And and then the data point. I mean, so for example, we're now using the AI forecasting tool, which we need to show you.
yeah,
And so from a business knowing what it's like to close in a month or a quarter, to give you an idea, our own manual forecast for the month was 39% accurate.
Yes.
AI at the same period, 7 days into the previous month, was 88% accurate.
Yes.
And at the end of 21 days into the month, it was 99% accurate. The
Yeah.
second thing is productivity.
Yes.
So doing more for less, whether you're in
Mm.
sales or marketing or whatever.
Mm.
And I think the third one is for those businesses that are on maybe on sale in the future.
Mm.
It's a beautiful what I call packaging,
Yes.
um, because having a system like HubSpot means you've got all your customer data, you've got your prospecting data, you've got metrics around conversions, all the stuff we've spoken about
Yeah.
neat place.
Yes. It's
All of
incredibly
which
important. Yeah.
are really important, aren't they? So,
Yes. Yeah.
Neethu,
Yeah.
let's finish off by some do's and don'ts.
Yes.
So, if our customers are going to the CFO to argue for HubSpot,
Yes.
talk us through some do's and don'ts.
Do tell them, like, give them a very good narrative. Like, how does it sit into the process of the company? How does it marry into his or her own sort of agenda for the year? Do that very well. Don't be afraid to put detail in. Don't be afraid to put scenarios in. I would always work through scenarios and see
Mm,
best case, worst case, possibly what's going to happen case. Involve them early if you can, if time and opportunity permits you to do that. Involve them early in saying that, this is our idea. What do you think about it? What would you like to see? Right, rather than second guess it, just ask a question. So I think that's something that most C-suite member people would executives would basically appreciate, that giving them the clarity at an early point of view to say yes or no, and being involved in the process, they would probably feel a sense of ownership over it as well. Don't tell them that this is going to give you the results that you dream of in an unrealistic period of time. I think that's where people feel, okay, you've not done your research. We are incredibly time strapped. Cash is scarce, or we want to protect what cash we've got. We don't want to put cash behind this project. So that's where it all goes down, probably. And
mm.
then convincing them from that place to come to a place of acceptance is going to be harder. So I think these are the things that I would probably tell people to do. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Neethu,
Terrific.
really appreciate your time and your wisdom and your experience that you shared with
Hopefully it
us all.
was helpful. Thanks,
Really
Adam.
helpful.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Adam.
much. And
Thanks a
hopefully that
lot.
was useful to everyone else.